Claudia, the Wi-Fi works so that their presentations show, correct?
Yeah, it's on,
Hi, Tom. There's room back there. So we can, okay.
It's not working for any of us.
Oh, it's not working?
It's not working for us, but if it works on our monitors, then we should be
So
fine.
like I've restarted and tried to
Yeah.
disconnect and reconnect, and it just says no internet secured. So,
All right.
I mean,
Okay.
Well,
I can get to
we'll
the note and stuff, so.
Okay, well, we're gonna get started and we'll
do you want
tackle
to
that issue.
Teams Eric?
No, I don't think it, I'll confirm
don't-
that it's not affecting anything.
Okay, yeah.
Give me 2 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. It's a little bit after 5, and I call to order the workshop of the Victoria City Council. Our workshops are informal, and so we're going to dive right into our agenda. We're having just a bit of technology issues, so the city manager ran out to see if everything is working the way it should, and it appears as though it is. So with that, we'll dive right into our agenda. So we have one item on our workshop agenda this evening, which is to review and discuss the downtown public parking expansion alternative plan presented by Tom Almquist, Terry Hartman, and Mary Mavison. And I believe Tom is going to kick us off tonight. So Tom, please come to the podium.
I'd like to thank Dana and the city staff.
Can you,
Up.
thank you. Yes, very good, thank
Start
you.
over. I'd like to thank Dana and the city staff for organizing the workshop tonight, the city council members, and Mayor Deb for your time. My name is Tom Almquist.
Alyssa's fixing that in the back. All right, go ahead, Tom. You should be good.
My name is Tom Almquist. My family has lived in Victoria and been part of the community for the past 28 years. My wife and I are members of St. Victoria Church. We have 2 kids, and they both graduated from Holy Family Catholic High School. I worked in public accounting for over 30 years. I'm a Victoria business owner and property owner. 22 years ago, my wife and I started Kid Talk, a pediatric rehab clinic which provides speech and occupational therapy for children in the community who plan on staying here. Kid Talk grew, and in 2003, we decided to invest and construct a new building in the downtown. My wife and I are one of the pioneers to invest and construct new buildings, a new building, which helped lay the groundwork for what Victoria is today. Through the normal course of business and over time, our city staff, our council, and our mayor change. The city code's comprehensive plan provides continuity and stability to our community, business, and property owners. The workshop tonight is to have discussion on selling the city-owned parking lot between Vic's Bar and Grill and the Gannon property to a developer versus keeping the city-owned lot and expanding it. Can we go to the chart?
Hold on. You want this chart? Oh,
No,
the first one. I'll come over there.
the information on the chart you see here was compiled by reviewing the city staff reports and the city codes. The chart will show the Gannon City Lot Property apartment commercial project won't provide any additional parking for the community or the businesses, or the downtown businesses, and explain who will pay for this parking. The first line item on the chart is based on the city report. The project, at completion, there will be 196 parking spots in the downtown. Existing city-owned parking lot, right now we have 43. On-street parking, city right-of-way, could be constructed without the project on city-owned land is 9. The code requires 2 parking stalls per apartment on the residential side, times 73 apartments is 146 stalls, parking spots required for the residents. A minimum parking requirement of for 6,000 square feet of commercial space is 3.6 per 1,000 for 22 spots needed to service the commercial side. The reality is a reduction of 24 parking spots per the existing code. Let me recap. We already have, the project will produce 196. We already have 43. We can build 9 on city land today. 168 are needed to service the new tenants, the guests, and the commercial space. 168 for current code, leaving us, this project is short 24 spots to net to zero. Another way to look at it, 73 unit apartment building, 6,000 square feet of retail requires 168 parking spots. Plus we have to replace the 43 spots that already exist. Plus the 9 spots that can be built. Based on the code, total parking need per the code plus existing parking would be 220. At the end of the project, we're gonna have 196, short 24. Of the 196 that will be completed, 100 will be paid for and maintained by the Gannon project, leaving 96 plus the cost of land to be subsidized by the residents to the developer for a total of 196. So the development requires 168 spots. He's only providing 100, leaving 96 short, or 68 short. 68 plus 28 spots that we already have need to be reconstructed for a total of 96 spots. Those 96 costs are costs to the residents by TIF to the Gannon project. Still leaving us short 24 spots for the community and the downtown business to net to zero. Does anyone have any questions?
Council, questions for Mr. Almquist?
This is based on the code. I'd like questions if you don't agree with the numbers.
Well, are we gonna get to the project that we were supposed to be hearing tonight?
Anderson.
Because this project's not before us. So,
This
what-
is, we said we were gonna compare and contrast.
well, I'm
So
not gonna
the-
get into an argument over parking spaces that aren't before us tonight.
I wasn't
because-
here to argue.
Well, the
I'm here,
developer's not
there
here.
are council
The
members.
developer for this project is not here tonight. It was not publicly noticed.
We told them,
All right.
we did notify. that
Councilmember Gunderson, do you have any questions on this chart?
No, I do not.
Thank you.
We are here because we want to clear up any misinformation.
That you sent out.
Yeah, you're saying there's misinformation, there are council members.
You
that said
sent
there's
out.
Yeah, we did send it out. I'm going based off staff reports, based off the code.
Council,
The-
questions?
No,
Chad, do you have any questions?
nope.
Okay,
Anybody else? All right.
Terry will, next Terry will present a better option, keeping and expanding the current parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hartman, welcome.
Hi, Terry Hartman, Hartman Communities, recognize many smiling faces today. We're gonna start with that.
Yeah, I have it up.
Is that the right one, Terry? This is what we're seeing.
Right,
Okay.
thank you. I recognize many of you because we've been before you with other projects. I've been developing here myself personally for over 35 years. My family's been developing here for over 50 years. Many of the residential neighborhoods, homes that people live in, we've been a part of that development. We've also developed in this downtown, the Clock Tower building, the Main Street building, we bought and renovated the Noterman building and the Lakeside building as well. So I was here in the 1990s, even the 1980s, developing and building, and people were moving out here without an improved downtown, but they were coming out here for for a variety of reasons, one of which early on was it was a cheaper place to buy a house. It was cheaper than Eden Prairie and Chanhassen, and it was the reason to come out here. But as our neighborhoods improved, people were moving out here not because it was cheaper, but because it was nicer. But when they got here, the question of, okay, we've got beautiful neighborhoods, but we don't have a downtown. We don't have goods and services to service us. But we do have a blighted downtown that needs some work. And I think if you take a hard look at that piece of property, there's probably an opportunity for a grocery store or a hardware store, or if nothing else, a coffee shop and a bakery and a dry cleaner. And I think going back to those early to mid 1990s, that was the question. And in late 1990s, the council at the time really formalized and prioritized downtown redevelopment. They put together focus groups to talk about what should that look like. And they also recognized that they needed to purchase properties and get out a checkbook and start putting in the infrastructure that was needed. We were one of the early pioneers to look at building the clock tower building, and the first thing we recognized is there wasn't even a piece of curb on the site to tie our front door to. So all of it had to be rebuilt, and it was an interesting time to go through that and kind of be the pioneer in all of that. Tom Almquist was a pioneer in his 1772 building, built at about the same era as the Wensman condominium buildings were built in that same period. Council at that time spent close to $3 million in infrastructure. In addition to that, they purchased many homes and many other properties to carry out this vision. At the same time, a group of us were working with residents to say, well, what should this look like? How do you put a vision towards what your downtown is, or do we just let anybody come in and start building buildings? And I think the focus groups at the time studied that and said, well, you have a choice here. What do you want this to look like? And what came out of it was we want to look different than typical suburban growth patterns. Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Chanhassen, nothing against those communities, but very suburban in nature. And the group at the time who got together said, no, what about something different? What about something more like an Excelsior or a Wayzata or a Stillwater or Red Wing, something that has a little bit more of a historical, durable feel to it. A little bit different, but not suburban green space. So the desire to redevelop our historic downtown and renovate those 100-year-old land patterns that we have was very much a part of what we wanted to do. The Noterman building and the bank, which many of you might know that the dentist downtown was the early Victoria State Bank, historical building, culturally worth saving, as was the Noterman building. Those are examples of the vision process of what we want to preserve and what we want to build towards. Characterized by 1-story buildings, 2-story buildings, and maybe 3-story buildings. The focus group formalized its vision. A guy named Bill Thiebel was the consultant at the time and put together the vision board that we all went from, and the downtown design guidelines at the time that said, here's what we want it to look like, here's how you should go forward. Not real rigid rules from architectural standpoint, but looking towards the past for authentic architecture, authentic and durable brick sidings and windows and fenestrations and those types of things. So there was a very intentional process that we took to get it to look like what it does today. City Hall was built, other buildings were built and carried on that same form and theme. Today, people come here for a variety of reasons, and I think we all kind of realize that downtown is a pretty special place. Certainly people come here for the businesses, to visit all the variety of businesses that we have. We personally have 45 small business owners as tenants in our buildings, and I know that there are many more kind of beyond that. People come here also for civic uses, and it was very intentional that City Hall be rebuilt here, because as a part of carrying out that theme of that this is a historical town center. We want to see those civic uses remain in town as well. So we were fortunate to be able to rebuild City Hall. We got a bonus with the library. And of course, we have our dear post office. That's probably the most visited piece of real estate in all of Victoria. The trips that generates is incredible. But people come here also for the community events. The car show was initially a gadget to get people to come to town to see what it is we're trying to build. And now people come from all over the region to go to the car show, and it's wildly successful. Of course, things like the Volksfest, Art Fair, fireworks, tree lighting, Halloween events, they come here for all of these community events in addition to just visiting businesses. The Bayfront Park overlooking the lake is another bonus element that we built in downtown, and it's really pretty popular. That park spurred the band shell. Now we have a whole nother amenity for people to come to town, to watch concerts in the park, those types of things. Children's programming, story time telling happens at that facility. My grandson came to see his first magician at the band shell, so it's got a dear spot in my heart for that. People come here to use the regional trail. Another magical thing that happens in our downtown that really was an accident. The railroad abandoned the railroad corridor. Hennepin Regional Rail Authority stepped in. I think they've forgotten why they own it, but originally, my understanding, it was a corridor for a light rail. I don't think those discussions are happening today, but Hennepin Regional Rail Authority still owns it and still manages, and they're still a stakeholder in downtown. Sorry about that. A stakeholder in the downtown. Hennepin, or Three Rivers, who operates the trail, has to lease it from Hennepin Rail Authority. Hennepin Three Rivers also owns Three Rivers Park, Carver Park, and that comes together in our downtown. All of these various user groups, stakeholders in our downtown, people come here for all of those various elements, well beyond just businesses. The lake is another element in itself that people come here to fish, use the DNR's access. Another reason for people to come downtown. The point that I'm trying to get to with these user groups is it goes well beyond people coming to town just for businesses. And as we look at all of those people, they all come here by cars. They all need a place to park. And this little community provides that parking infrastructure that we love about this downtown, but we're challenged with capacity. We provide that for the region, for the businesses, for the residents, and for all of these reasons that people come to downtown. The reason I establish all those user groups is later on when we talk about who do we ask to pay for this? We have to go beyond a small set of people to do that. Let's jump to the plan. So the first plan that we put together, our group went to Westwood Professional Services to look at how do we just expand that lot as it exists today. How do we expand the surface area that we've got today and get some additional capacity? On the left is the existing conditions. I think we all know the numbers. There's 43 spaces in the core central part of that lot, and there's 22 spaces along Randy's Way that make up the parking along the alley for a total of 65 today, and that's on the left-hand side. Are you guys able to see that, or you?
Yeah, we can see it on our monitors.
So you've got the details. On the right-hand side is what we're proposing is the first plan, the simple expansion of of the surface. So what we looked at doing is reorganizing and restriping that lot as it exists today. And we recognize there's 4 different access points going into that lot. If we close 2 along Quamaclet, we can lay out new diagonal spaces all along Quamaclet, and we can add 10 spaces where there's already city land, city right-of-way. It's a pretty easy and modest increase.
So Terry, just to clarify, you're suggesting closing off the access off Quamaclet, which is hard to say, and then angling 9 or 10 new spaces right there?
Exactly, and I wish I had a way to run the cursor.
Okay,
But on the right-hand side of the colored rendering is Quamaclet, and there's new
Okay.
diagonal spaces
got it,
that is the heart of this surface plan expansion.
got it.
Those spaces will run from the Vic's bar all the way up to Mr. Gannon's property. And there's 2 access points there that exist today that take traffic into that lot. We would close those.
So you can only get in off of,
You can only
Randy's Way.
get in off of Randy's Way.
Okay.
And if we need to, we may have to restripe the core central lot and make that a one-way if we need to maximize the lane width. And at the end of this process of a little bit of work on the surface, we pick up 10 spaces. It's a modest improvement, but it's pretty modest in cost as well. We think this is a project that could easily be handled by city crews or a small landscaping company, excavating company. And it is not a large project that would take up much more than a month's worth of work.
and your diagram here showing the traffic patterns would accommodate cars. So as it's restriped and we close down those things, that all works to
That
circulate.
circulation works, and
Okay.
again, Westwood Professional Services is a well-trusted engineering surveying company that's worked in this community for a long time.
Okay.
Their work is respected. Now, we're working from a conceptual standpoint, not detailed surveys, not detailed engineering, but conceptually, this is what we're proposing.
Fair, thanks.
The cost to do this, they didn't give us a detailed line item as they did the next slide, because the work is pretty minimal. It's restriping and doing a little bit of excavating, a little bit of curb, and a little bit of blacktop. We believe that the cost of this, if it's in the $50,000 to $60,000 range, I would be surprised, much less than $100,000. And we're attracted to this because we've already paid, a handful of us small businesses are aware that we've paid in over $40,000 in parking fees already. And we believe those dollars in your account goes a long ways to substantially completing this pretty modest increase. It's modest, but 10 spaces is 25% increase in that core downtown area. Businesses have paid the dollars already. I think they're looking for some expansion with those dollars. I think it's perfectly appropriate that the city would look at something like this as really a pretty straightforward, non-controversial, nobody's rights are impacted here. It's a change in how you use it with a little bit of new striping, but I think it's pretty straightforward how we could get modest cost already in the account, and we can get that paid for.
I interrupt you with one question about
Councilmember Eder.
this plan. Is there pedestrian access if these 10 spaces are closed off to what would be the east end of the lot?
Well, in addition to the diagonals, there's room for a sidewalk,
Okay,
and there'd be sidewalk access to both facilities.
okay, so would we need to add sidewalk along there? Because I'm just struggling to see if somebody leaves Vic's Bar, do they have to walk all the way around to get
No.
into the parking lot?
No,
Or
it's
is there?
as simple as walking over the sidewalks and curbs, just as you do today. If you walk from Main Street to past the Lion's Den and you go to the parking lot in the back, you traverse over sidewalks down to the blacktop or over another sidewalk that gets you to the back. There's no barriers in between, it's simply sidewalks.
Councilmember Yansky, anything else?
I'm just trying to think if there's any ADA compliance issues that we'd have to be concerned about access to the lot.
Absolutely, and that's why you bring in these engineering companies to oversee that for us, because it's a really good point. Walkability is preserved.
Right, and I'm just trying to kind of do some thinking through my head as to that may be a touch more expensive than we might otherwise estimate, that's all.
Well, projects always go over a little
course
bit,
they
right? But again, pretty modest in the big scheme, and the dollars, substantial amount of the dollars are there for you to work with. So let's jump ahead to
Thank you.
plan number 2, or option B, whatever you want to call it. For this plan, it's more of a structured and quite a bit more of an increase, kind of plan number 2. We went to Walker Consultants for this one because it's a horizontal structural increase. Walker Consultants is well known for building parking ramps. And we went to them and said, we don't want to build necessarily a parking ramp, but we want to do a structured facility. And this started, years ago. Those of us who kind of work and live downtown recognize that this site is unique in that it slopes from Tower Boulevard to the north down to Steger Lake Lane. It slopes just enough to create a walkout situation, 10 to 12 feet of separation between those two street grades. And what that does for us, if we ever had to build a kind of a structured deck, is prevents us from having to build ramps inside of structures. So you can access a lower parking lot off of the Steger Lake Lane street grades and an upper parking lot off of the Tower Boulevard street grades. We're stacking one parking lot on top of another, or in other words, it's a tuck under parking lot. We really struggle to call this anything more than just two parking lots, one on top of another. When you start referring to the word ramp, all kinds of different visions come into place. And this is all anybody has ever discussed internally downtown was needed for this site. It's an interesting use of the opportunity of the street grades. The top elevation is a few feet higher than Tower Boulevard. That's it. That's all the higher this structure has to go to be built. It's no higher than the first floor of Mr. Gannon's building. The top of his building is 10 or 12 feet higher than this structure. So instead of building a multi-story apartment building, we only need to go 2 floors. We need to put a guardrail around the top floor. And the way that the numbers pencil out for this, there's 37 spaces per floor, a total of 74 in the structured part of this. We have the same diagonal on-street spaces. We have all of the same spaces along Randy's Way, the same 22 spaces. So in total, on this first page, you'll see the total in the bottom right-hand corner of 108 spaces total, and we gain, in fact, we truly gain 43 spaces, and we're in fact doubling the amount of the spaces that exist in that core central lot. We haven't gone beyond the original footprint. We have not taken anybody else's land, and maybe more importantly, we've kind of preserved everybody's existing rights and everybody's expansion rights. So everybody from Mr. Gannon's property is completely preserved. He can continue to do what he's doing today, or he can redevelop in the future, and his rights are not compromised in any way. Same thing with Mary Mabison at the Creamery, who's the neighbor on the west, Eric Forsberg with the Victoria House, Paul Carlson. All of their future rights of expansion and redevelopment would be would be protected and preserved. Maybe most importantly, quaint and charming is preserved. Walkability is preserved. Views to the lake are preserved. It's a pretty modest, again, expansion. It's a pretty modest structure, again, as compared to going the indirect route of building an apartment building. This is a much shorter, less intrusive. This is built with precast concrete structures. They're built off-site, cured off-site, and brought in when needed. And we're talking really a matter of months to build this. One short construction season. In Minnesota, that feels like 2 weeks, but it's about 4 to 5 months versus the risk of going through the winter and this thing turning into another project that would potentially turn into months, if not years, to complete. This is a short construction season. A short season to build something like this. It's pretty straightforward. If you can go to the next page. I'm sorry, previous to that, Claudia, you might have to scroll down on that one. If you've all seen that one in your monitor, that's
Yes.
the
This is
elevation of it. We did the best we could working with Walker to make sure that you not only see the plan view of this, but you see what you'd experience walking on the sidewalk from that human scale or the pedestrian scale in terms of its height. If we had a little bit more time, I think we would add a decorative street light or two to the top deck. But the top deck is open air. Open air means its convenience is preserved. Community events like car shows, car washes, those types of things that need to use that upper floor are preserved. I think the comprehensive plan is preserved here as well in that the expansion of this, the new spaces, the new 43 spaces are underground and hidden. And we're not taking up and expanding any more footprint than exists there today.
So Terry, can you talk a little bit about the entrance to the upper level? Where, is that coming off of Tower? Or where is that coming off of? And then,
This plan preserves Mr. Gannon's building entirely, so we don't want to interrupt his traffic flow. So we're going to come off of Quamaclet for the upper.
and does that impact those 10 spaces on the street then if we,
If you see they're drawn on there, they would also be included in this plan. Then there's spaces, diagonal spaces along, that would be included along Quamaclet. We have to add in this new
entrance?
This new entrance. The bottom floor entrance will be from the Victoria House near where their dumpsters are off of Randy's Way
Okay.
today. And that's how you get to the lower floor.
Okay,
This would require no elevators, but it does require stairs to get up and down. And unlike putting this in a building like an apartment building, we're not putting cars in a building. So we don't need HVAC, fire sprinklers, all of the security elements that go with that. You know, it's expensive to build these things, and we'll get to the cost in a second, but the components are much less than putting them in a building initially to build it, and the long-term maintenance of this is less than, again, putting all of these cars in a building to maintain.
thank you.
And the next slide. The next slide is
The money slide.
the detailed cost estimate. Conceptually, $2.64 million to build. It's not inexpensive, but not outside the range that we've talked about over the years, that it may cost $30,000 to $50,000 to build. What we're looking at here is if you divide it by the new number of spaces, we end up with $35,000 a space. This is not a 3 or 4 or 5 story ramp, and this is not $6 or $7 or $8 million of development. It's much more modest than that. And much more expensive than the first plan. How do you pay for that? Well, again, getting back to this concept that there are a variety of user groups. And I don't think the burden of this $2.64 million should really be divided on one group. Businesses or residents, everybody plays a role in this if this is the direction that we want to go. What we're proposing, this is a city improvement project. This is not a developer or a development group. This is a city street improvement. Done the same way that you do all of your street improvements. You'd bond for this. The building has a 40 to 50-year lifespan, unlike streets, where you typically do 15-year bonds. Our Walker consultant tells us that cities pursue 25 to 30-year bonds for something like this. I don't know that there's anything longer than that. Had a little bit of a discussion with Dana on this about what are the interest rates for the bonds today. Rates are higher than they should be, but they are what they are. 15-year bonds are somewhere in the 3.5% to 4% range. If we extend this to a 30-year bond, we're getting into 6% and maybe even 6.5%. I'm not a public finance person. I'm not sure if there's a way to split the difference and say, let's do a balloon payment after 15 years and take advantage of 4% bonds and later take advantage of whatever the prevailing rate is. What I can tell you though, is I did the math on what's the debt service. That's the important thing to all of us. And because of that range in interest rates, we fall between $140,000 to $190,000 a year in debt service if we're going to pay this back over the 30 years. A lot of money to me, but if we look at where do we go to for the different user groups, we took a look at just what do we pay already? What do the businesses pay already in taxes? And you might be interested to hear that if you look at the core central business district that goes all the way from the used car lot on the east to the used snowmobile dealer to the west, everybody in between, we pay over $1 million a year in real estate taxes already. $1 million a year, we wish that all went to the city, but a small amount, $125,000 of that goes to the city. Not enough to pay for to say that the businesses alone can pay for the debt service. We pay $137,000 to the county in additional line items per year. Doing the two of those, we're up to now $260,000 or so. Interesting, we pay another $6,500 a year to the county CDA. Now earlier, I kind of laid out the different user groups and the role that the county may play in helping us, because there's regional significance to the park, regional significance to the trail, and everything that we do here that attracts people from the county into downtown. Those two user groups, we're now up to somewhere in the $270,000 a year. What I'm going to lay out for you is $700,000 to $800,000 in revenue, including these existing taxes that we already pay. There's an existing TIF district that's running for the flats, another $40,000 a year, and based on the 2022 tax statement, that the city is receiving, that those of us who participated at the time understood to be used for downtown parking expansion. Some of that was used already for 20 or 25 spaces along Steiger Lake Lane. I don't think you used up the full $40,000 a year, or what's going to amount to a little over $1 million, $1.25 million. That's what that was estimated at. We're only a few years into a 25-year run, and there's $40,000 a year. through the use of the city capturing a small portion of the TIF from that project. Not all of it, but a small portion of it. That's an existing TIF that's already here. If we look at other projects in the downtown that will redevelop, that the city in the same way could capture a small amount of the TIF, maybe a 25% in the same way that it did the flats. You look at a project that might happen on the Leitner property that's been proposed, we would recommend in the same way that the city captured some TIF from the flats, that the city do the same thing on future projects. The Roars project, we would suggest, if you did the same thing that the flats did, there's $75,000 available to mitigate the impact that a project like that will have on our downtown. Not just parking, but maybe some traffic and traffic control and street control as well. When I said earlier that this ramp or this structure would preserve opportunities for expansion around it, you look at parcels like Mary Mavison and her creamery property, it's been no secret she's looked at ways to develop such as a boutique hotel. I don't know that she's gonna request TIF, but certainly the city, in recognizing the impacts of new projects downtown, should look at capturing a 25% or some other portion TIF. I can't put a number exactly on what she's proposed. I don't think she knows the dollar value. But as you look at the Victoria House with a new owner, looking towards expansion and renovation, Paul Carlson at the Vic's Bar has talked about protecting his rights for future opportunities, future renovations. I think there are many parcels around it. Again, in this situation, Rich Gannon's entire parcel is available for an opportunity in the future to expand, renovate after he's done with his current uses, whether that's 1 or 5 or 10 or 20 years, whatever he decides the right time to develop. Capturing small pieces of that TIF, we can't put a number on today, but again, in the case of the flats, it's $40,000 to help goes towards that debt service. Two other interesting tax line items. State of Minnesota gets $300,000 a year from our little group. One is a general line item to the state, and another is for fiscal disparities. Combining the two is $300,000. I don't think there's many people other than Dana in this room who understand fiscal disparities. And if we have a chance of seeing any of that money coming back, or if we already do through local government aid or any other distribution of fiscal disparities. But it's a lot of money that the state of Minnesota takes from us, and I think we need to take a minute to figure out, is there a way to get any of that back for the very purposes that they say they're taking it from us, which is economic development in small growing communities. Again, $300,000 that the state collects of our portion of that $1 million a year. Switching gears a little bit, our group volunteered to look into a local option sales tax on food and beverage. Star Tribune reported in spring that the legislature this year was approached by 31 communities in 5 counties to ask for a local option sales tax increase. It's a complicated question to ask because apparently you have to go to the legislature to get approval, and you got to go back to your citizens to ask them, do you want to tax yourself for more sales tax? But again, when you look at these user groups who come to Victoria, stop at the restaurants, have their burger and a beer, they put that largest demand, peak demand, on our parking. I think that's when we recognize where we have the biggest challenges is at that peak demand. It's worth looking at, and it's worth thinking that there are user groups outside of the citizens, the businesses, the residents, who would be the ones paying for that. And our group representing that ownership has said, we don't think it'll put a significant impact on increasing our experience. We believe a 0.5% increase would represent $65,000 to $75,000 a year based on their estimate of what the total sales are. I'm coming to an end. Tying that all together, I've laid out $700,000 to $800,000 per year of revenues that we think should be looked at to cover this debt without additional assessments on the businesses or without increasing taxes on the residents. I think to answer these questions, it'll take quite a bit of time to study it. Our group has said, wouldn't it be great if we could work with city staff, with other residents, to form a committee to look into all these various ways that we can finance these improvements that we need. It's gonna take that. It's gonna take a little bit of time to think about. There's no magic way to finance this unless you're willing to just raise the levy and issue the debt and increase taxes on all of us. I think it takes time and energy to putting into the improvement plans that we've got in front of you, and how do we pay for it without putting a big burden on any one particular group. I think I'm done with my presentation.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about the long-winded approach to
Thank
it.
you. You gave us a lot to think about. All right. And Mrs. Mavison is wrapping us up.
That's a wrap.
My name is Mary Mavison, and I've been one of the owners of the Creamery Building for the past 18 years. I own Counselor Realty of Victoria and have worked in Victoria for the past 40 years. I served as the mayor of Victoria for 4 terms, and I helped create the vision of Victoria that everyone loves. I'm invested in Victoria, and I love Victoria. People often tell me, I hope Victoria keeps its charm and small town feel. Everyone loves the vision that we helped create over the past 20 years. We, those of us in this room, invested money and constructed our buildings to be consistent with the vision of an authentic, small, charming, and quaint downtown. These landowners, myself, an owner of the Creamery, Tom and Candy Almquist, owners of the Kid Talk building, Paul Carlson, owner of Vic's Bar and Grill, Eric Forsberg, owner of the Victoria House, Terry, Monica, Jerry, and Ann Hartman, owners of the Clock Tower building, the Main Street building, the Noterman building, and the Lakeside building, Tom and Ree Wortman, owners of the Borough. We all want this vision to be preserved and guided in your future growth. We all support the plan. Every one of those landowners that I just named support the plan that Terry Hartman just presented of keeping and expanding the public city parking lot rather than conveying it to a developer that requires being subsidized by public tax increment financing. The parking lot is currently 85% to 100% fully utilized by the downtown businesses. What does a subsidy look like? Can you just, that's perfect. It's going to be hard for you to see. When we talk about tax increment financing, I've got a chart up, and this is an example of the flats. So the flats has an increment for 25 full years. The increment is what is above the base tax rate. The flats is going to take in $5,000,000 $270,000 over the next 25 years. Where does that money come from? Because that money is going to go back to the developer or the city part of the project, the 25%. So that $5,270,000 no longer goes for your normal city taxes, your normal county taxes, your normal school district taxes. That building does not provide for that for 25 years. On this chart, it shows every year the city gives up their tax, the county, and the school district to take care of all of the people in that building. So at the end of those checks that are going out, if we go to the next slide, this one like this.
I think the other direction, because you're starting at page 2. This one?
Yep. So just in summary, on the flats, if you look, there's, in year 2018, that project produced $165,000. $41,000 went to help pay for the 25 spots. It's part of the project, and I'd love it if staff could include that number when they talk about the flats. It's never in the 144. There's actually another 25 spots that came from the flats for parking. And the developer gets back checks every single year. So the money goes into a fund, and the developer's getting back a check of close to $200,000 every single year for 25 years. It doesn't, that big apartment building doesn't go to pay for the city taxes, the county taxes, or the school district. So when I read that people say, oh, these big apartment buildings, we're gonna generate so much more in tax, in a TIF, it goes back to the developer. But you know what stays? What stays is all of the people in the parking, in the apartment building. They still need county services. They still need city services. And they still need school district money. So after you've given back $5,250,000 that didn't come to the city still has to provide those services. They gotta pay for the services. And the county has to pay. And the school district has to pay. And you know what? We know what that costs because the government's told us. When they did this tax increment financing chart, they said those services cost $5,251,000. So the people have to absorb that for 25 years. That's what tax increment financing looks like. The people pay it. It's not free money. The taxes that come from this go into a separate fund that's generated back in a check every year to the developer. And we, the taxpayers, pay for the $5 million of services for the next 25 years. So we have that here at the flats. We have 16 years that's happening out on Downtown West. I think you want to think long and hard about doing tax increment financing when it's not needed. Tax increment financing is, but for tax increment financing, they won't come. But guess what? They're here. You've got United doing a project. They're not asking for tax increment financing. You've got a project out at the church. They're not going to be asking for tax increment financing. Once people start coming, you don't need to provide tax increment financing. Any proposed project that will cost our residents $4 million in a TIF note, plus over $2 million in financing charges, for a total subsidy of $6 million to the developer, with no additional parking spots per code, that exceeds our comprehensive plan density by 26 apartments, should not be considered. Deny excessive building heights. Deny excessive parking variances. Deny excessive densities. Keep and expand our current parking lot. Further, the taxpayers will have to pay for all of the services to the city, county, and school district for those residents for 25 years. a cost of over $4 million based on actual city, county, and school district taxes. The downtown landowners support our comprehensive plan that keeps density on residential buildings in downtown limited to 24 to 75 units per acre. And we ask that you adhere to this guideline. It is one of the only guidelines that we have left that controls the size of a building, how much you're putting into one space. That measurement consistently keeps a check on the size, height, and proportion of residential buildings in downtown. It's a great guideline for you guys. If something looks like all of a sudden there's 26 more apartments than what really should fit, you should realize we're getting too big. We support maintaining the current code, 2 parking spots per apartment, which may be under structure in the downtown. You don't have to. If you have limited land, the parking code says 2 per spot, 1 could be outside, but both could be underneath the structure. We don't need to change that. We support retail shops, restaurants, and offices in the core downtown. We, the landowners, support this parking plan that allows for existing businesses to expand their businesses and pay into a shared parking fund. You know, we want to pay into a shared parking fund. We want to help to develop this city parking lot. We support this parking plan. All of the above items that I just mentioned keep the charm and quaintness of the existing downtown. Downtown Victoria is a hidden gem, highly desirable, and patrons rave about it. Here are some quotes about Victoria that show just how much people love Victoria's vision and why we want to keep it Victoria. Quote, "Love all Victoria's outside dining, such a sweet town." Quote, "I love walking to my office from Rose Street. The walk between Noble Lion and Noterman Building is lovely. The buildings are so charming, and I like the small town feel." Quote, "The Victoria Car Show is the best ever, so welcoming. We love walking the streets with all the people, seeing all the outside diners, and of course, love the cars." Quote, "Towns like Victoria are becoming a thing of the past, and I believe people are looking for that small town warmth and feeling." Quote, "We enjoy walking your quaint, wonderful downtown, shopping and dining at the restaurants. Victoria's downtown is so special. We love it. The right projects will come to Victoria without subsidizing developers with the residents' tax money. I assure you of that. It's already happening. Our citizens do not need to subsidize a parking ramp for a large apartment building and 6,000 square feet of commercial space on our public parking lot. Let's fix the parking that we have and move forward to truly double our existing parking, as Terry Hartman demonstrated in his presentation. The plan that was presented tonight should be a priority for the city staff to work on as a public improvement. We should immediately build the 10 parking spots in the city's existing right-of-way on Quamaclit by using the money paid by the businesses that is in a shared parking fund. The Creamery, Winchester and Rye, anxiously awaits to put $90,000 into that shared parking fund to be able to open their upper level deck. So you now have people that actually want to pay and help with shared parking. The plan fits the land that Terry showed you tonight. It's nestled into the landscape. Where you drive in on Tower Boulevard, it isn't any higher. When he talks about it being at Rich's floor level, it's such a wonderful, quaint area to be able to park the vehicles. All area-wide businesses can expand. Rich, Vic's House, Victoria House, all of them, and we can truly double our parking. We, the business and landowners, ask you tonight, please honor and preserve what we have and keep it Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, questions? Any thoughts? Given us a lot to digest tonight, a lot of thoughts, a lot of options. Currently, our comprehensive plan states that we are adding parking through redevelopment. So that's a diversion from this plan is a diversion from our comprehensive plan. So that's going to require us to take some time to think about. Council, other questions?
I don't have any, Mayor. Thank you.
I guess I have a couple.
Yeah, Councilmember Roberts, please.
So currently about 50% of the downtown area is parking. I mean, do we think that taking a prime spot in downtown is the best place for just a parking structure when we could have more commercial space and such that supposedly you guys are in favor of? Is you're okay with more commercial space? So I'm wondering, 50% of our downtown is parking. That is a lot.
Go ahead,
So I
please.
guess I'd
Mr.
like a
Hartman,
response.
please.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because we believe that the comp plan looking forward encourages parking to be hidden or put underneath new buildings and otherwise hidden so that walkability can be maintained. But at the same time, you know, the parking lot behind the Main Street building was planned for many years. And I don't know that anybody looks at that parking lot and says, boy, that's the most, you know, sore thumb looking thing that we have. We need to get rid of that. And the same thing with the existing parking lot that we have there today. It's very functional. It's small in scope. It's nothing like driving into a Target parking lot, which I believe is what the comprehensive plan wants us to prevent. But I don't think the expansion that we're talking about is a huge wholesale change in what we already have that people say, you know, it's a pretty cool place downtown. Even though we do have parking lots and they are exposed. So I don't know that we're talking about an expansion of a footprint, and anything that I proposed to you tonight doesn't expand that footprint at all. The Main Street, or the parking lot behind the Main Street building, is 80 cars when you include the Floyds and all of the users there. Pretty good sized parking lot. And again, as people think about, is it a pretty neat downtown with those exposed spaces? They define already what makes it a pretty cool vibe downtown. What I would say is the neat thing about those surface expansion lots is that they're convenient. And we're all creatures of convenience. We don't want to drive into a building and hunt and peck for a space. We're pretty happy driving into these parking lots and maybe circling a little bit, but they're pretty easy to find. I don't think we're asking for a wholesale expansion of much more than we have already.
Councilmember Roberts, anything else? Oh, yeah. Mrs. Mavison, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Chad Roberts, you know, one of the things that has concerned the residents during this process with the redevelopment of the city parking lot is that you have to get the project so big. I mean, it's huge. Because it's on such a small lot, you have to go so big, and I know our mayor has asked for them to reduce the size, but then the numbers don't work. Now, when you have a project and it's got to be so big to make the numbers work, there's a problem. So they're growing the project to be big so that we can pay for 98 parking spots, and we're not really netting any extra, as Tom Almquist showed. So there's a balance. You're bringing in 73 housing units. You're bringing in 3,000 square feet that they say they're gonna utilize as retail. So I think the Hartman presentation actually adds more retail. Rich Gannon has the availability, as he talked about in 2003, when the street went in, you know, that they looked at that as being able to be retail. So he has the availability there to do wonderful retail. Then Paul has a chance with Vic's to do some expanding, and Victoria House has some chance to do expanding. So I think it's actually allowing for much more expansion of the retail in the downtown.
Councilmember Roberts, anything else?
All right, now.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rife, please.
Yeah, just to clarify on the parking numbers of option B, just want to make sure my math is correct, looking at the information. Was it a net, the total spaces were 108, correct, in option B, I believe?
Claudia, can you bring that back up?
With the first level, second level, right, 74.
Yeah, adding the Randy's Way parking, the new diagonals along Quamaqlet.
Yep.
And the stacked 74.
Okay. So the net increase from what we have today, just as is, you get that 43. Is that
43.
accurate? Okay. And then just in general, just a general question, has there been thought with any of these options to have retail in this? You had a name for it, not parking ramp, but parking.
Tuck under garage.
Tuck under garage. There you go. So has there been any thought of that?
Well, good question. And again, when we came up with these concepts, we looked at many concepts that included, you know, how could we expand this even bigger and maybe put buildings on top of the structures, that kind of thing. I think by preserving everybody's expansion rights and letting them do that in the future, we do add retail, and we do have a potential for adding retail and for office space. I looked at Mr. Gannon's lot alone, and what he's left with to develop in the future is interesting, because his piece of property is about the same size that we started with for the clock tower building. The original building sits on 0.21 acres, and we built 6,000 feet on the main floor, and we built 6,000 feet on the second floor of the first building there. So retail on the main, offices above, 12,000 feet that Mr. Gannon could build with this plan. Now, he needs more parking if he's going to be doing that. Could we expand this structure if he wants to? Could we expand this structure underneath his property and expand by another 25 or 30 spaces so that he could build what he wants to build and extend diagonals along Quamaqlet across his property and extend diagonals across Tower Boulevard, so he has to do what the Winchester and Rye building did and the Clock Tower building did. We have diagonals and nice wide sidewalks in front of our spaces. By doing that, he could expand his retail and his office use by 12,000 feet. He can expand additional parking underneath and along all sides.
Okay.
One example of.
Yep. No, that's helpful.
expand that. And we're certainly all in favor of more retail, more offices, no doubt.
So if we increase retail in that area, you're saying we'd add another level to this structure? Add another, I mean,
If
that's,
Mr. Gannon wanted to develop in the future, as I personally looked at his property and how his rights are preserved in our proposal, we don't touch his property today. He can continue to use.
I'm talking about the structure to meet the retail need for parking. Added retail would mean that we have to add more parking. So in this area, would we have to add another level to this structure to meet continued retail growth?
No, we wouldn't. We would extend the structure, the lower level underneath Gannon's. In that scenario of him developing, we would extend it underneath, the lower level would extend underneath his property.
So now we're doing what you just said people didn't like doing, which was driving around in a structure.
Well, it's a way for him to get to as much as 12,000 feet. He wouldn't need to if he wanted to just build 6,000, which has been a desire of his. But for those of us who would like to see more than that, there's certainly a possibility of doing more. And I think by kind of putting a pause on rushing to a plan, we get to then talk with all of the property owners that are around it and say, what do you see in the future? Even if you want to continue to use your property for storage as it is today, what do you see in the future? And I think taking a year or more to answer those questions, I think we'd find out, what do we need to do?
And
Councilmember
Can I
Gunderson?
ask a follow-up on that? So, so let's take the Gannon property away, right? Like let's pretend he's gonna be there for 20 years, just like it is. But we've heard, right, the potential for a boutique hotel. So that obviously will need parking. So I'm just wondering, so does that mean then that creates that structure to go up higher now too?
No, if there's a boutique hotel, we've talked with the staff that we actually have the land to park it. We've actually talked to the mayor. If we put something in on our land, we'll park it ourselves on our land. We're not asking for the city for anything.
Oh, they're saying that you can't, people aren't gonna be able to hear you because you're not.
Mary,
at
do you want to come up to the, I'm sorry. I'm got this frantic waving going on that I'm trying to understand what's happening back there.
We've talked with staff, if we do a boutique hotel, it would be sized, we own the land, and we would park it on our land. So this has nothing to do with
So you'd have a lot or underneath parking or something?
we would be doing underground parking, and we would 100% take care of our own parking for whatever project we brought forth to the city.
Thank you, but I
Thank
think
you.
the question is, if there's all these expansion projects going on, are we limiting ourselves with this parking garage with two, do we?
You may choose, you may choose to go under another level. That's part of the process of, in 2000, when I was the mayor and when we went through and met with every single business owner, we found out what their expansion plans were, and we worked with that. That's what would help you to find out, to see what Paul wants to do, to see what Eric Forsberg wants to do, to see if Rich wants to do something or doesn't want to do something. Talk to Winchester and Ride, talk to Noble Lion. That's the pause that Terry is suggesting, that we find out kind of what are the future plans, so that you could go down lower, Deb? Absolutely.
Thank you. Council,
I just have one
Councilmember.
question. If, Claudia, would you be able to bring up the slide that had that the Gannon Monarch project is not providing any additional parking? Is that,
The first, you talked about the first one.
that's the first one.
This one?
Okay, I just am struggling with this negative 24 number.
Okay. The project says it's gonna provide 196.
Okay, I'm,
Okay, I'm just gonna, real quick, sorry. The code said you need 168. So subtract that. We already have 43, we're not providing that. And we
Understood.
already have 9 that we could build.
okay, so that's where I want to pause here.
Okay?
9 is not here now, correct?
9 is not, we do not have.
Okay, so the negative number is really 15, correct?
Sure.
Okay, that's my only question. Just want to,
We do not have them, but they're included in the 196.
I want to make it clear to
Okay, let me
the
rephrase
public
that.
that this number is negative 15.
It's a negative 24.
Why is it negative 24
Because of
if there's 9 spots that are not here?
Because they're included in the 196.
They're not in the 196.
They are in the 196. That's why it's 24. They are included in the 196.
So are we double counting?
No.
Okay.
They're part of what that the project is saying could be built. When the project is done, they were saying there'd be 196. They are using those 9.
they are using the land that the 9 spaces are on now, correct?
Yep, the land, they will use the land,
They would use the land, so the
Yes.
9 spaces are not there.
but in their total, it is included in.
Okay. I'm going to have a conversation with staff about it later.
That's fine. I mean, we've gone through all the staff reports, and that's where we got our numbers from. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
I have another question.
Yeah, Councilmember Roberts, please.
There's been a lot of talk about building height and TIF, and so I'm curious, Terry, not that long ago, you were in favor of the flats. So can you speak a little bit to what the difference and what changed, I guess?
Well, there is a difference in heights between the flats, and we're being careful to talk about a proposal that's not being talked about tonight, but
Well,
there
that
is
ship
there
is
is a
kinda sailed.
difference. On one end of a piece of property, the flats, we have a 3-story building. Hypothetically, a hypothetical project on that same intersection, we have a 5-story building. They don't compare. On the north end of the building, of the flats, we've got a 4-story building as compared to a building that comes out of the ground 73 feet. It's 6 stories, but it comes out of the ground 73 feet. I think the appearance of height is much different than the flats. Now, the flats did exceed the, did we decide that was a city code ordinance regarding 35 feet? But it's a conditional use permit that allows you that you use to exceed that.
So it's not, because we've heard a lot of, right, the pamphlets that were sent out, it's over 35 feet. So it's okay if it's over 35 feet, if it meets your guys' requirement of what's okay, because the flats was over 35 feet, right? But it's something else is just a little bit higher than it, so that's not okay, so.
Well, certainly, relative to 35 feet, the more you get above that, the more offensive it is.
But we're not talking about a 10-story building, we're talking about very similar heights.
Well, 73 feet is
Yeah, well, we'll-
close to a 7-story building. And when you look at the totality of that building, it's 8 stories because it goes in the ground. The reason that I was in favor of the flats and supported it is what it brought to the table architecturally and how close it remained to that early vision, and the fact that it not only provided its own parking, but it also provided $1.2 million to expand public parking. That was the promise at the time. For those of us who had to say, by way of conditional use, does the flexibility and the public benefit match? And I believe that in the flats case, the public benefit matched the variances or the flexibility that was allowed.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all relative, I think.
Sure, thank you.
And I'm just curious.
Councilmember Gunderson.
There was a lot of misrepresentation of TIF. I think our Downtown West project, if I'm not mistaken, actually came back and showed an increase in payments to the schools and to the counties to the taxable land value for what that TIF was going to do when the project is complete. So when we do TIF projects, like we did with the flats, that increased the payments that were going to the schools and the dollar amounts that were going to the schools. So we have a slide, I believe, that we can get them that shows the increase in taxes to the schools and to the counties in terms of payments, what the value was before the project and what the value was after the project was approved. So I want to be clear that we need to be honest about what we get in front of us and what we talk about when we talk about TIF and financing and all that. Because the project at Downtown West did show an increase to Waconia schools because it's on the other side of Steiger.
So if you look at your Downtown West TIF project, you don't have your TIF note done yet, but what we do have is what was discussed in your council meeting when it was voted for. And what you agreed to do was to give the first 15 years of tax increment financing to the developer for a total of $3.8 million. Okay? When it's a TIF fund, it comes into this separate fund. It doesn't go out to the city, the school district, or the county. It's in a totally different fund.
Right, but that's
Dana,
basically
okay.
payment in lieu of the projects that they're creating for you, for the infrastructure that they're developing. So that they're not just being
You guys are then paying for the
giving.
infrastructure right
money.
now to get down there. And then in year 16 to 25, you will be allowed to use that TIF money for qualified projects like the infrastructure that's going. But again, that has to be related to the project. That is not general fund TIF money. That TIF money is not in the general fund. It does not go to the county, it does not go to the school district, and it does not go to the county, to the city.
My understanding is that if there's a referendum, that money does go to a school district.
Okay, so,
If there's a referendum.
okay, so,
For once-
Dana, can you clarify for us, please?
Yeah.
So we understand.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Yes. So TIF monies that would be collected, the increment. So when the value is set, what you are receiving today, so if, I'll just, in simple terms, we'll say if a property is worth $100 today, and you have a TIF district on that property, the development that happens now makes that property worth $200 today. The taxes that you collect today on the $100, the city, the school, the county will continue to receive the taxes that they are getting today. So when that development occurs, and now it's worth $200, that increment, so the $100 difference, will now, if there is a school referendum, the referendum portion of the school district taxes will go in full, in that full value, to the school district. But you will continue to receive for the duration of that TIF district until it decertifies the 100 original value. So maybe that,
And I'd like to just add, so the Victoria Flats, the base tax was $3,500 on the raw land. You're probably similar where you guys are. What, you know, the base tax, what it is today. On the Victoria Flats, it was $3,500. The increment is from all the way up to $150,000. We'll just take a middle. So the total tax is $153,000. They subtract the base tax, the raw land that was sitting there. The rest is the entire increment. So on Victoria Flats, they automatically take out the $3,500, and you've got $5 million of increment that's coming in, and that is being used fully for that project.
Yes.
So
public.
it doesn't go to the county, it doesn't go to the schools, and it does not go to the city. Now, the exception is what Dana said was the referendum. So if there's a referendum, then that can come in. But we're talking about the regular, everyday city tax, county tax, school district tax. For 25 years, those do not get funded for that TIF district.
And how many other developers in town are in a TIF district currently that needed a TIF?
Well, the entire time when our projects all went through, none of us took TIF. I think that TIF
None of
was
the
given.
developers you listed took TIF.
Just let me finish my sentence. I think the C&H Carpenter building, there was TIF done for the grocery store. But Terry Hartman did not take any TIF. Mary Mavison did not take any TIF. Tom Almquist did not take any TIF. Who else do we have here? You know, all the people that we listed. I think the only one is the grocery store. And we never did TIF, you know, to a developer, at least the entire time we created the vision. There could be TIF, but the city took it all. And then secondly, then the grocery store was something that was highly desirable, and it needed to be able to have C&H Carpenter. Now, this is different. The Beard Group did this project, and they've got millions of dollars that are coming in on TIF. Every year, the tax dollars go back to them in a check. You know what they did? They lasted 18 months. And what did they do? They sold, because that was worth so much money. They told us, too, they weren't going to sell. They told us they were going to stay. But they sold it. And so the new buyer gets the tax dollar check back every single year for the county taxes, the school district taxes, and the city taxes. The city can keep, I think it's approximately 10% for administrating this TIF fund, because that's where the money goes to. But it doesn't go to help pay for your schools. And then somebody's got to pay for all those people. They still need the schools. They still need the county services, mental health, all kinds of things. They also, the city still needs to be able to, we have all kinds of things. We now, you know, we've got the ladder truck, we've got all kinds of needs. There is no money that comes for that. So it's a subsidy. We subsidize that. The current taxpayers do. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Council, other questions?
I just want to clarify back to Mr. Almquist. I can see the 9 spaces in the 196 number. And if, for the sake of brevity tonight, if it's okay, if we could have a sidebar, you and I, and go through that, would that be fine? Yes. Thank you for that.
Any other questions, comments from council? If not, that's the only item on our agenda tonight, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second?
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.